Hello everyone, this is PK Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another episode standout review, and this edition we will focus on Cobra Kai Season 3 and the second episode titled Nature vs Nurture. Now there will be spoilers for this episode, so if you haven't seen it yet, I advise you to stop watching now, go away, catch up with the first two episodes of this third season, including as well the previous two seasons, and then come back to this review. You can also check out my previous review of both the two previous seasons and the premiere episode for the first season, all within this channel, and I will provide links within the description and also the end title cards as well. So this was a fantastic episode, really delving deeper into certain characters, carrying in a lot of rich themes and some emotional moments, and along with some great action set pieces. So this episode we really centered very much on Kreese as we really start to flesh out the character, and we start off by seeing earlier flashbacks to his youth back in the San Fernando Valley in 1965, where he's working as a waiter in a small diner and he's having to put up with the typical college bullies taunting him, and we learn as well, they make reference to the fact that his mother had committed suicide, and they're teasing him throughout. And this is really a current theme that runs not only throughout the series of Cobra Kai, but I think in fact throughout the whole entire Karate Kid franchise, where really it's about characters being the underdog and having to challenge and struggle over adversity, constantly put up with people initially overempowering them and finding that inner strength to initially strike back and fight back. And I thought this was a great way to add really much more context with Kreese, add more depth and layers to the character. He has, of course, as we all know, been established as the primary villain throughout this season, and we get reminders of that as we intercut these flashback scenes with the current story, where we see him training the students and he takes one of the mice that they name and he feeds it to the cobras, and the student with the glasses, he doesn't like it very much, so he's kicked out of the team. And again, this is feeding much more into the more, if you like, cartoonish style of villain of Kreese that he has been made throughout this season, but I don't mind it too much. Again, it adds much more of those fantasy elements within the show, and it's given more credibility because of the flashbacks, again, where we learn more context about Kreese. He didn't always start off this way, so we see much more of a character progression. And again, if we don't necessarily agree with Kreese's methods, we at least get a better understanding of the character into why he does the things he does. And I just think it's a great way to add more context to the character on screen. We also get some well-needed background in terms of Tori, as we see her having to work two jobs just to keep out of the detention centre. This is of course following her expelment from the school. We also know that she is treating her mother, who is very sick, and she constantly has to give her dialysis. Another issue for Tori is that she's got a landlord who she is already behind 1 month's rent, and he's constantly blackmailing her, threatening to go to her probation officer if she doesn't put up with the funds. So again, this is good because it adds greater context to Tori, because for the most part, particularly if we go by the second season, we see her as the typical cocky, very reckless student, very sure of herself, a bit crazy, a bit psychotic. But again, we add more depth to this character to at least see the situations that she has to put up with and the scenarios and the challenges that she has to fight back against. Again, giving us a better understanding as to her really kind of hardened, more tough exterior. And I love the scene when Kreese goes and meets Tori, wanting to recruit her back into the Cobra Kai dojo because he sees her as one of the most strongest students. And I love the back and forth between the two as they share each other's experiences. They both had to cope with dealing with mothers who were sick, and Kreese makes that line that he never understood the illness that his mother suffered from. Again, I think that's an element of the character not wanting to acknowledge or really understand why she committed suicide. Maybe we'll get more development as to why that happened throughout the rest of the season, but I just love the back and forth between the two. Tori clearly wants to go back into the Cobra Kai, but she understands her current situation and she knows that she really needs to start cleaning up her act in order to get her life back on track, and I love that understanding on here. We see, of course, she's looking back to the landlord, and later on in the episode we see Kreese essentially comes to some sort of agreement, sorting the landlord out, putting his fingers in one of the cigar cutters. So essentially now this is how Tori gets back into the Cobra Kai. So just, I think, a great interaction and great development between these two characters, really underline that Cobra Kai is once again more of an ensemble show despite the two primary characters in Daniel and Johnny. And we focus on those two as hinted towards the end of the second season and the beginning of this third season. They really now have to start working together, and we see that their first assignment is to find Robby, and we get great back and forth between the two as they go to the detention center and they have to essentially play good cop, bad cop against the former gang mates of Robby that we saw from the first two seasons. And I love the banter and the camaraderie and the contrasting tones between both Daniel and Johnny. Once again, this is the essence of the show, their approaches, their different mindsets. And yeah, it is very much of a buddy cop dynamic as we see that frantic car chase as they see someone who stole the original vehicle that Robby had stolen from the car dealership, and then we get that great action set piece when they go to the garage and they have to take on the Farious gang. Daniel wants to walk away from the fight, but of course Johnny heads in there strong first. Some great choreography, some great roundhouse kicks and punches, very well staged action sequences, and I think this might be one of the most high action, most biggest set pieces throughout the entire season, and great throughout. Very martialized staged action, and of course it results in Johnny stepping too far. Daniel wants to hold back, but Johnny wants to keep going forward. I love that particular sequence that we get where they take down that one person when Johnny sweeps him from underneath and Daniel gives him a high roundhouse kick. Very well staged, very good action as well. I think that's something that's even been heightened throughout this third season, is the action choreography. So that's all great to see on here. The two eventually split as Johnny goes his own way, and we see really two very emotional scenes, I would say, when Johnny goes back to Miguel and Miguel is asking him, about his methods, the fact that he followed him all the way, he did everything that he taught him, and he's ended up, being partially paralyzed for the moment. And Miguel, you could argue very justifiably, wants to know why. Why is it that he followed Johnny all the way, but he's ended up being where he is in his current situation? And Johnny can't answer. This is again one of those very fascinating aspects when doing the right thing doesn't necessarily mean you end up in a better place. Miguel, of course, showed Robby mercy, and that's how he ended up in hospital. So I love that fascinating dynamic. Again, the relationship between both Johnny and Miguel, as I've mentioned in previous reviews, is the foundation of this series, and we will continue to get this throughout the following episodes after this one. This is even followed by an even better scene, I feel, where we see that Daniel has tracked down Robby, who has gone to the therapy centre to talk to his mother. And it seems that Daniel is wanting to build bridges and reconcile with Robby, but then we see that Daniel has actually brought the cops with him. Good intentions, because it's better off for Robby if he goes now rather than keep him being on the run. But obviously Robby feels betrayed, and you can understand that. Him and Daniel again had a very good connection in the same way that Miguel and Johnny did. So Robby feels antagonized by this, and we will see this later on throughout the season. So again, just a very great emotional moment throughout the season. I think all the actors involved throughout this episode play this scene very well, and I think again it emphasizes what is really one of the core elements of the show, the relationship and bond between sensei and student. We saw this running right throughout this episode, whether it was from Kreese and Tori, from Daniel and Robby, or from Miguel and Johnny, and you can see the various factions and connections between all three pairings, and I thought that was fantastic to watch. This really was a very great episode, I think, following on from the sound premiere episode of this season. Once again, we really are delving more into the characters, but at the same time, we're still providing those very high energy and action set pieces, and we're getting a great context from Kreese, and we saw that very touching moment at the end when he has hooked up with the girlfriend who was with the previous bullies, and we see that he's enlisted to fight in Vietnam, and we get a touching farewell scene between the two. He's going to come back a hero, and again, we know that's not the case. So we're going to find out more about that separation throughout the remainder of the season. And then we get that great speech from Kreese at the end, training his students, saying that you can't show weakness, and if you show strength, it will make you untouchable or invincible. And I think it's just a great performance from Martin Covey. Again, I love the fact that we're developing this villain, adding more layers and depth and substance, and this will run through for the rest of the season. This is how you do it. Again, you know, you build the villain throughout the entire season. You don't make him this kind of villain or freak of the week. By building him consistently throughout the season, it adds more weight to the story and makes the overall season more compelling, and that's what I think this episode has done. So a great start so far to this second season, and an episode standout for this third season overall. So those are my thoughts and opinions on an episode standout of Cobra Kai, the third season. This episode titled Nature versus Nurture. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What did you think about this episode? Do you think it's one of the standout episodes of this season? As I've mentioned in previous reviews, I imagine a lot of you watching have already gone through the entire season. So when you reflect back, did you think that this was a standout episode? If there are other standout episodes of the season, let me know in the comments below. As I've mentioned before, I will continue to do these standout episodes before doing an overall season review, which I'll upload later on this month, because I like to go through and study each episode, or what I believe are the most standout episodes throughout this season, and then I will talk about them more in depth. So let me know what you think in the comments below on a very true early standout episode of Cobra Kai. That's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.